Hello, my name is Natalie Nunez. Thank you for joining me today to learn more about investigations in the workplace. Today, we're going to specifically talk about briefly an overview and the stages involved in workplace investigations. And we're going to talk about when to investigate, how we're going to plan for that, note taking, and taking actions. So while complaints vary in degree and circumstances, we must take them all very seriously. So how do we receive complaints, you may ask? We can get complaints from managers, peers, hotline complaints, written or verbal statements. The most common complaint in the workplace is bullying or harassment. What I've seen recently, those are the most calls that we get. So they could be employee misconduct, sexual harassment, abuse of controlled substances. When a complaint comes in, if it's through a compliance call line, then that is confidential. And while we always handle all of the investigations that we're working on confidential, as far as who is making the complaint, sometimes that isn't always possible. So we have to be sure that we're not guaranteeing complete anonymity. The first stage that we're going to go through is we're going to plan. Once we're informed of an investigation, we should review the policies, determine who's going to investigate. We want to make sure that we have someone who is impartial or someone who is objective. We wouldn't want to have a manager who's being accused of some poor behavior investigating this complaint. Where will the interview take place? Will it be done in person? We are conducting more and more investigations through WebEx because of the pandemic. We also need to determine what is it that we're investigating? What is it that we're trying to find out? Sometimes when you get a complaint of bullying or harassment, for example, they're going to elaborate. They're going to talk a lot about a lot of different things, and just understanding what is the point that we're trying to get to. Is it really bullying or harassment that we're looking in? Understanding the definition of that. A lot of times associate conduct is definitely related to harassment or bullying. So sometimes it's hard to determine what specifically are we trying to find out. We should plan open-ended questions, questions that are designed to give someone the opportunity to elaborate on and not lead the person. For example, have you witnessed any inappropriate conversations or behavior? Pause. If so, really? What have you witnessed? What have you overheard? Things like that. And then determining if it's firsthand knowledge or secondhand knowledge. So that's all part of the preparation of getting your questions ready, to make sure that you're asking the appropriate questions depending on what the investigation is going to encompass. Next, we need to see if there's any evidence that we need to collect or preserve, such as emails, text messages, camera footage, which is often used in discovery later. So we want to make sure that we're reviewing these things and preserving. We also want to get a list of all possible witnesses, but be prepared to let that witness list grow. You don't have to be confined to just your original thought of who you should speak to. As the investigation goes on, be open to learning more about the witnesses. The second step is when we're actually interviewing the witness. It is recommended that you interview the witnesses first. Well, complainant first, then witnesses, and then finally the alleged harasser, if it's a harassment case, for example. We're going to let the person know the purpose of the investigation. You could say something like, we're looking into a concern that have been expressed about misconduct. While we don't always need to identify the target of the investigation or go into explicit details, it is usually a good idea to assure the witness that he or she is not the target of the investigation. This is going to let them have a sense of relief, and it's often how I start off my conversation with the witness, letting them know that, because once they get a call from HR, they're automatically on high alert, and I want to ease them and just give them the opportunity to be able to speak freely, remind them of the anti-retaliation policy, and go from there. Again, open-ended questions are key. Allow for a moment of silence. If someone needs a moment to collect their thoughts or perhaps think about something, we want to give them that opportunity, as well as the opportunity of how to contact you should any additional information become available that they would like to share. It's really important when taking your notes that you are sticking to the facts. You also want to make sure that you're not adding any personal opinions onto the notes. If you have something that stands out, maybe their body language or their mannerisms, or they were really fidgety, for example, you could have a separate notebook where you're documenting that information, but never on the investigation form, as that is open for discovery in any type of litigation case. So we want to make sure that we're sticking to the facts. Then we're going to do a summary report from each person that we investigated or that was part of the investigation, the witness list. We're going to put all of our common themes together and come to a consensus of what makes the most sense. What do we think actually happened there? The next thing is we need to make sure, the final thing is that we're stopping the behavior, make sure it doesn't happen again, avoid retaliation, and if there are any forms of retaliation, to quickly act upon that. And then we want to make sure that as human resource professionals, we're offering a summary, but also some recommendations. It could be training, it could be a verbal reprimand, transfer, suspension, written warning, and ultimately lead to termination, depending on the severity. And we always want to make sure after we've completed this, that we've wrapped up the investigation, that we let the complainant know that the investigation has been closed and will be in accordance with and taken in accordance with the company's policies, and let them know that it has been resolved. We definitely need to make sure that we're getting back to the person. And as a final thought, I think it's a good idea to reach out to that person in the next week or so, just to see how they're doing, how they're feeling. Remind them that we have the Employee Assistance Program. It's one of the most underutilized benefits in many organizations, and make sure that they have that information, or if they need any follow-up, just to see how things are going, and treat each and every complaint that comes in seriously, fairly, and with justice. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.